In this short section, I'd like to explain the sequence and the process of learning a kata. By doing this, I can suggest the different ways and the different stages of learning a kata to try and help you as the student learn each important part and spend enough time on each important part. Now, when you first begin learning kata, there is a lot to think about, and often it's overwhelming. So the first thing to worry about is the direction of the kata. So in the first three kata, Heian Shodan, Heian Nidan, Heian Sandan, and actually in several other kata, the direction begins to the left. So in Heian Shodan, if we take the very first kata, the sequence of movements begins to the left. And then we punch. And then we go to the right. Strike and punch, right? So we need to focus on direction first. We go left, then we go right, and then we go forward. And we turn and go left, which because we turn, our back is this way, so now this is left, and then right, and then backwards. So forwards for us, but backwards from the camera angle. This is the first thing, direction. Once you know which direction you need to go, then we have to look at what are the different techniques in the kata. So in Heian Shodan, the very first kata, there are 5 different types of technique. There is a downward block. There's a front punch. So that's the second type. And we've got downward block again. And then we have a hammer fist strike. So there's our third type of technique. And we have punch and block. Then we have a rising block. All right, there's our fourth type of technique. And we continue all the way towards the end and then turn, and we have knife hand block, our fifth type of technique. So by looking inside the kata, although this kata has 21 movements, there are only 5 different types of technique. So by practicing each technique, now we understand the basic technique. We know the direction of the kata, so now we have to put that together. So now we ask ourselves, what is the sequence of the movements? First of all, it's block and then punch to the left. Then it's block and strike and punch to the right. Then we move forward, we do a downward block. Then 3 rising blocks. And we're going to turn, go from my angle here to the right, but at the point in the kata to the left, and so on. And we see where the movements occur within the kata. So we have our direction, we have the different types of movements, and we have the sequence of the movements. Once we know this, then we can work on improving our technique and improving the look of the kata. So now we can start thinking about power. Some kata have powerful movements and not powerful movements. Slow movements in advanced kata, Sochin, the beginning is slow, but still powerful, but it's slow. Certain movements, very fast, boom, boom, quick movements. So we have to look at the speed and the power of our technique as the next prerequisite for learning kata. Once we understand which movements should be done quickly, which movements should be done slowly, which ones should be done with full power, which ones with half power, which ones with no power, then we're really taking our kata to the next level. Once we've done that, now we have to focus on the rhythm of the kata. If we do a kata with just a very basic rhythm, each time it goes 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And it's very robotic. It doesn't have any flow to it. It doesn't have any feeling to it. So by focusing next on rhythm, we learn that some katas are going to go 1, and then the next 2 movements are 2, 3. Or maybe it's 1, slow, and then pam, pam, 2, 3. So rhythm makes a big difference in how the kata looks. If you relate it to a dance performance, if you were to watch the dancer go through the whole routine with the same speed and the same movement, it would look very boring and it wouldn't have any kind of feeling to it. So kata needs not only direction and sequence and power and speed, but it needs rhythm to truly look nice or to be better. Once you have all of these things, then you can start focusing on improving your personal overall performance of the kata. By looking at these things individually, working on them separately, you go up to practice Heian Shodan, whatever the kata is, and you say to yourself, I'm going to work on the sequence of movements. And then that's all you do. You don't even have to make it look good. You just think you do a block and then a punch, a block and then a strike and then a punch. Get it in your mind up here, and then from there, we can go, next time you say, okay, now I want to work on the speed of my kata. Right? So you might, from that point, work on just the speed that you want to present in your kata. Maybe you want to work on the rhythm, and then again, you focus just on that. Because if you focus on everything at once, it's too much, and it becomes overwhelming, and then your kata doesn't look very good. Break it up into sections, break it up into focus points, and then gradually keep putting it together and keep improving your kata, and then you can make it look good. This is just the performance aspect of the kata. The next part of the kata, process of learning kata, is once you know the sequence and the direction and the movement, so you've got good speed and power and you've got an appropriate rhythm for the kata, now we have to start looking into the kata and say, what does it mean? Now we're getting into the application of the kata. And in Japanese, when we talk about application of the kata, we're talking about two things. We're talking about bunkai, which means analysis, and we're talking about oyo, which means application. With bunkai, if you imagine an iceberg, with an iceberg, maybe only 10-20% of the iceberg is above the water. And there's this whole mass of ice underneath the water that you don't see. You only get to see the 10 or 20%. So what you see, that's equivalent to the performance of the kata. Right? If you look kind of quickly at the iceberg, you see it, there it is. That's kind of very superficial performance of the kata. If you look in a bit more detail, you might see the different design of the ice and the different size and so on. Now you're looking at a bit more detail for the performance of the kata, but you're still missing this huge mass underneath the water because you don't see it. This 80% right here, this is the true value of kata, because this is the application and the meaning of kata. So when you study kata after you can perform it and you understand the movements, now you got to start asking yourself, what does each movement mean? A downward block could be blocking against a front kick. It could also be a strike to the groin. It could also be blocking a punch up here first and then striking to the groin. So now we're getting into the meaning of the individual techniques. This is called bunkai, analysis of technique. By studying bunkai of kata, you start understanding the reasons for different techniques and also how these different techniques fit together and why. This is a very important aspect of your karate training. But because kata is so overwhelming to begin with, you usually don't get to think about this much at the beginning level. This comes later. Beginning level, you've got enough to worry about as to which direction, which leg is forward and backwards, which hand is out, and all the rest of that is very confusing. But when you really master the kata, you need to understand what do each individual movement, what do these movements mean? This is bunkai. Oyo application, now we can take it one step further than that, and we can take the movement out of the kata, and now we can say, how else can I use these movements for my own personal use, for self-defense, or just for learning and training and improving my karate? So we take the movements out of the kata, and we say, okay, the kata shows us that this could be used for this, 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 and this. Now I can see that I could use this in a slightly different way, and I can add this and this to my overall self-defense sequence or to my overall purpose, and now I'm truly understanding the meaning and the purpose of the kata, but I'm also taking it and making it mine. Because at the high level of karate, you've learned your system, and now you have to adapt and you have to take from what your system gives you those things which you are good at, those things which make sense to you, those things which suit your body structure and your build and your intellect, and take those and modify them for your best use and make karate your own. because a true performance of a kata is an honest expression of who you are. Through honest expression of who you are, you can show your inside character and being through the outward performance of your kata. And when you see someone truly do that, then it's very beautiful to watch, because you see that person in their movements, rather than seeing that person focusing only on the movements. They're actually in the movements. So these are the different stages of learning a kata, and we could get into a lot more discussion on that. But I think that should be enough to give you an idea of the general process and sequence of learning kata and the importance of kata within karate.